Okay, hey everyone, it's Annie and welcome to my channel. I hope you guys are doing well in this very hectic time. Hope you guys are staying safe and healthy, and please take care of yourselves. So I know that right now is college decision season and some colleges have already started releasing their results. And I know that most colleges have prospective student visit days around a month from now. And I know that with this situation going on, a lot of colleges have canceled those days. I know that for UC Berkeley, Cal Day has been canceled for sure. Also around mid-April, I flew around the country, visited different colleges, and I felt that that really helped me make my decision. But of course, with this COVID-19 situation and quarantine going on, I know that a lot of you guys don't have the luxury to do so. And that's why I made this video to hopefully provide you guys with as much information possible to help make your decisions. So in this video, I'm going to give you guys an overview of UC Berkeley from my perspective and also what you can expect as an incoming student at this school. I'm also going to preview a few clips that I took my first semester at Berkeley. As a disclaimer, this is just from my perspective and my opinions. Obviously, it's not representative of everyone's experiences at Cal. Alright, so let's just get right on into the video. I'm first going to start off with a very brief personal introduction to give you guys some context. So I came from a high school also in the Bay Area, roughly 1 hour away from UC Berkeley, and it's very academically focused. So in that sense, I felt more prepared for the academic environment at Berkeley. Also, it's not too far from home, so if I miss home at all, I won't feel homesick, or, if I want to go home at any time to eat my mom's food, that's always an option. It's also far enough, so I feel independent. Some things that I value most when looking into which college to choose are academics, opportunities, location, good work-life balance, and the vibe or home factor. On campus, I'm most involved in opportunities relating to design, marketing, and innovation, those areas. So I'm gonna first start with academics because I feel like that's kind of the core of a university. Starting off with the majors and degree programs offered at Berkeley, I would say that it's pretty flexible and there's a wide variety. Flexible in the sense that nobody is really binded to a certain major and it's not difficult to switch around, especially within your home college. For instance, the College of Letters and Science, which is the largest college on campus, freshmen are admitted as undeclared. It doesn't matter what major you apply as computer science in your app and you got in, you still have to go through a process to declare that. On the other hand, if you applied as any other major in the College of Letters and Science, for instance, you can still declare CS as long as you take the prerequisites and get a certain grade. That also ties into the flexibility of classes. It doesn't matter what major you're in or intending to major in, you can take pretty much any class you like, for the most part. Your admissions into a major doesn't determine your admissions into a class. I think for undergraduates, you're even allowed to take graduate level classes like later on as an upperclassman. But the thing to note is that for some classes, especially for the smaller and upper division classes, they do have reserve seating for certain majors, but generally speaking, definitely through your 4 years of undergraduate experience, you should be able to take those classes that you really want to. Even if you're a history major, you can still take EECS classes. There's also a very wide variety of classes. For instance, for me, as I'm going into more of the design side, it's not really focused on like UI and visuals, but it's more so at Berkeley focused on like user-centered design and human-centered design. So there's a lot of like more innovation classes and like, for instance, bio-inspired design and 3D modeling design classes. It's like a very wide variety, which is very nice. Another thing to note is that it's not difficult to switch between majors because a lot of similar majors have similar prerequisites. Prerequisites are classes you take in order to declare that major. For instance, if you take a look at data science and statistics, a lot of the prerequisites do overlap, which is easier for you to double major or switch out your major, etc. Generally speaking, Berkeley is pretty flexible for a public university, but I would say that transferring to a different college in Berkeley may be difficult. So for instance, if you're in letters and science, computer science, and you're trying to transfer into the College of Engineering EECS, that is very, very difficult. But the good thing is you can still take classes across colleges. I also don't think it's impossible. I do know some people who've transferred between like other engineering majors, like civil engineering, and also it's slightly more common to transfer between like other colleges like CNR or College of Environmental Design. So that's also an option. Moving on to classes. So choosing classes at Berkeley can definitely get difficult. We do have a very large student population, so as you can imagine, it's pretty hectic. One thing that I do suggest is for you to plan ahead of time. So keep a spreadsheet or use some kind of planner to figure out your classes that you want to take each semester and also backups. Alright, so I just realized that halfway through editing these clips, a lot of the audio got cut off, so I'm really sorry for that. But some last few things I have to say about classes at Berkeley. First thing is class size. I know a lot of people are worried about Berkeley being very impersonal in the classroom environment because some classes are like 1,000 people large. For instance, CS classes can get really, really big. But one thing I have to say is even though CS classes are big and some other tech classes as well, there's an option where you can just webcast it, so you don't have to go to class if you don't want to. But even so, there's also discussions and sections. So it's usually a 20 to 30 person max large class where you go over the information covered in the lecture through a GSI, which is a graduate student instructor. And that's a great way you can meet peers and figure out who your study buddies are through sections and discussions. There are also a lot of classes that aren't that large. So for instance, for me, I've taken a lot of classes that are max 40 people large. So there's definitely a great variety in class size. So you don't really have to worry about it being impersonal. Secondly, we also have classes called decals. These are usually 1 to 3 unit classes, pass, no pass, so it wouldn't affect your GPA, but it counts towards your total units. These classes are usually interest or vocational based. There's a BTS decal, a cooking decal, Pokemon decal, fashion design decal, you name it. They're usually taught by student instructors, but don't belittle that fact because I know, for instance, my friend, as a first semester freshman, she took a actuarial finance decal, and through that course alone, it helped her pass her first actuarial exam as a freshman. Last but not least, I wanted to go over the curve and the competitive environment that a lot of people are concerned about. I believe I'll be talking about this in the upcoming section, so stay tuned. The intelligence spectrum is super wide. So going into Berkeley, you'll think everybody's super smart. I know that I looked at a lot of these videos, like YouTube videos about Berkeley, and the number one advice is don't expect yourself to stand out at Berkeley, even though you stood out in high school. That really discouraged me at first, but then I realized that it definitely varies from person to person. For instance, I came from a high school that was already very academically challenging, so at Berkeley, I felt like it wasn't too bad. I feel that that's probably different from students who didn't come from that kind of background. So I'd say that it definitely varies, and you can kind of take people's advice with a grain of salt, even mine if you'd like. But generally speaking, there's always going to be people who are smarter than you, but also people who aren't as bright as you. So there's a very wide spectrum. Don't expect yourself to be at the lower end of the spectrum and everyone to be at the top. You'll probably fall somewhere in the middle, is all I can say. All right, so next I'm going to get into the overall university campus culture. I would say that the number one thing that pops into mind is diversity in many different aspects. I know that one common stereotype is like, oh, UC Berkeley's full of Asians, but I'd say that there's definitely a very large diversity in thought, in culture, in interests, a lot of different things. Generally, the culture on campus is very innovative, everyone's very driven and ambitious. For me, this was a good thing because I was always into startup culture, innovation, and I felt that that kind of opened up opportunities for me. One thing to also note is that Berkeley tends to lean towards the liberal side. So we do have protests on campus. Sometimes around campus, you'll also see people just waving signs of political, religious beliefs and just like exclaiming their beliefs out loud. You'll get used to it. Even Berkeley tends to be more liberal. There's definitely diversity in thought and beliefs. And one thing to note about protests on campus, which I know some students may be concerned about, is that I don't think it affects you that much, in the sense that if you want to participate, you may, but for the most part, it's not dangerous. It doesn't hinder your educational experiences per se. At least my experiences at Berkeley, it hasn't been that way. So you might find it like a little like crowded on certain days, but for the most part, it shouldn't affect you. Memes. That is also a part of Berkeley culture. We love memes, as you can tell by our Berkeley meme page. That's all I gotta say. Memes is definitely a part of our culture, I guess. Yeah, humor. Also, from my experiences, I felt like Berkeley culture and students on campus were pretty chill. I know that a lot of students were telling me before I came to Berkeley that everyone has no chill, everyone's super competitive and cutthroat, but I kind of felt the complete opposite at Berkeley. I'd say that students on campus really know how to work hard and play hard. So there are students that I've met who don't study, just have fun and do whatever, and then the next day they get 100% on their midterm. So yeah, that's something that I personally observed. Last thing that I have to say about Cal culture is that we have very interesting occurrences that happen here and there. For instance, we have like the Naked Run. We have a lot of things that go on throughout campus. You can go on the Overheard at Berkeley page and you'll find all sorts of things. But generally speaking, like every few days you'll find something interesting that happens. I know that when I talk to my friends from other universities, they're like, yeah, university life is pretty normal, but I feel like I'm always the one with all these strange, interesting stories, so definitely a very interesting and vibrant environment to be in. So before I move on to extracurriculars and other things, I feel that it's important to also address the stereotypes on campus. I know that Berkeley stereotypes definitely deter students from choosing this school and almost discourage me from choosing Berkeley, but I'll address them right now. The Berkeley meme page, which is pretty well known, definitely exaggerates the stereotypes to a certain extent. So the idea of Berkeley being cutthroat, students being snakes and sabotaging each other, or just people being depressed is definitely over-exaggerated to a certain extent. I do feel that different students have different experiences, but also don't be scared by the stereotypes. I know that certain classes can definitely get difficult, but people still know how to find joy in it and get the most out of the learning experiences while having fun through social life. I feel that people generally have a pretty good balance between social and academic life. Even when midterm and final season comes around, it's kind of fun to have a group of people to just study and grind with. So I feel that the cutthroat environment, in the sense that it's competitive and stuff like that, I don't necessarily think the competitiveness is as extreme as it's made to be. I know that for my experiences at Cal, I haven't met any snakes, honestly. They probably exist, as do in every other university, but I feel like at Cal, most people are pretty supportive and they'll help you and you'll help them. So yeah. Another stereotype is that students are always depressed and just sad on campus. I feel that there are times that students get down, obviously, but you also have to know that this happens at every other college as well. I know that for my friends at other schools, they tell me that at their schools, people tend to kind of mask that. And so that makes it even worse, because if you aren't open to other people having a hard time, then it's harder to find support and help. Oh, excuse me. Sometimes in college, not just at Berkeley, you'll definitely feel a bit lonely, but one good thing about Berkeley is that because there's so many people, there's definitely a potential for you to find your group of people. Alright, so now I'm going to dive deeper into extracurricular activities and clubs on campus. So starting off with clubs, first thing I can say is that clubs on campus is not like every organization or club in high school. Some clubs are just very hard to get into, which I'll dive deeper into later. I'm not trying to scare you, but for some of these business consulting clubs, for instance, they boast to have over 1,000 applicants and they accept like 1-digit number of people. So it's even harder to get into some of these clubs than a very selective university itself. What you usually need to do to get into these pre-professional clubs is you submit an application along with your resume. There's definitely a few rounds of interviews and potentially other additional activities, and then based on that you get chosen or you don't. Recruitment season can definitely get very hectic and stressful. It usually occurs during the first few weeks of each semester. So I remember my first semester of freshman year, it happened the week right after Golden Bear orientation, where all the like top consulting clubs were recruiting, and then that was just very hectic, especially your first week of college. The good thing about Berkeley is that even when you don't get into these clubs and you fail your first time, when you keep trying, it'll benefit you. For instance, I know my first semester, I had no idea what consulting was, and I ended up getting to one that I really liked, which I was very lucky, but I also got rejected from many of them. So don't feel like you're the only one who's getting rejected from everything, because that's actually very common. Like, I know a ton of people who are incredibly smart, who have a lot of, business experience from DECA and FBLA. Let me tell you, that doesn't necessarily matter. They apply to like 10 consulting clubs, they get into 0. But then later on in the following semesters, when you apply again, they see that, you're persistent, and also you kind of know what to expect. And so your admissions, it sounds like college admissions all over again with clubs, which it kind of is, but yeah, your chance of being admitted into the club or accepted into the club is much higher. One thing with clubs on campus at Berkeley is that consulting culture in pre-professional clubs is huge. So consulting isn't necessarily constricted to just business. Like, yes, there are business strategy consulting clubs, but there's also, for instance, I'm in a design consulting club. There's also like environmental consulting, like some biomedical consulting, there's tech consulting. Consulting is everywhere. Just overall, being a part of these consulting clubs is definitely a very good learning experience, because you are usually working with a very small group of students, also consultants, and you work on client projects, like real clients. So that's definitely one cool part. Pre-professional clubs aside, there are definitely plenty of other clubs for you to be involved in if you figured out that that's not for you. For instance, there's a lot of cultural clubs. I know that a lot of my friends made their closest friends through these clubs. Just like almost every club you can think of, because there are over 1,000 clubs on campus for all sorts of interests. There's a link that I'll put right here that has a list of all the clubs on campus, so you can scroll through that, preview that, and look at what Cal has to offer for your extracurricular interests. You can also participate in student government. For instance, I'm doing outreach and design, and it's just really interesting to get to be a part of, contributing to the overall school community. Oh, also, there's a club on campus called AFX. The dance community at Berkeley is actually pretty big. This is like, I think, one of the largest organizations or clubs on campus. There's a lot of different like dance teams within AFX, so if you don't know how to dance, you just want to participate for fun and to meet people, there's like, I don't know what it's called, but like a group of dance teams that are just for like all sorts of skill levels, and then there's the project team, which is slightly more skilled, and then competitive. So it's, at least from my roommates' experiences and also a few other friends, they said that a lot of their really close friends were made from AFX. Okay, now I'm gonna go into residential life, which is definitely applicable to you freshmen. I'd say that residential life, it definitely varies from individual to individual. A lot of it is dependent on who's on your floor and who you're rooming with. Personally, I lived in a triple in Unit 1, Building Putnam. I generally say that for the units, Unit 1, 2, and 3, they tend to be more social in comparison to Blackwell and the other ones. It definitely varies, of course, by your floor and who you're rooming with, but that's kind of like the trade-off. Like for instance, Blackwell has very, very nice facilities. They have a gym. It looks almost like a hotel the moment you walk inside, but the trade-off is it might not be as social as if you were at a unit. Blackwell also only allows you to room with one other person, so a double, whereas for units you have a choice to room in a double or a triple. Or a single, I think. For me, my floor in the dorms, it was co-ed, so in the bathroom, yes, you share showers with different genders. Share stalls with different genders when you're brushing your teeth. This may be getting too much into detail, but the walls are not very soundproof. Laundry, you have to pay like $3 to do. There's also like a studying facility, usually in each unit. So there's the academic center, which I usually go to study. There's also like a mini gym. Not really a gym, there's honestly just 2 treadmills and a few ellipticals, but yeah. Now I want to get into cafeteria food. Cafeteria food on campus, I'd say that generally speaking, people will say it tastes really bad, but I honestly don't think it's that bad. I'm not a very picky eater. 3 main places on campus for cafeteria food. There's also one in Clark Kerr, but it's really far. A lot of people don't go there. So there's Crossroads, also known as Croads, Cafe 3, and then there's Foothill. Foothill is generally known to be the best one, but it's also all the way up in North Side, so most people don't go there unless you have classes there or if you live in Foothill. So it varies. Sometimes they have good food like pho. Sometimes they'll have, you know, just like fried chicken, curry, naan. They try to mix it up and make it diverse, like representing different cultures, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Like their banh mi is just... I'll have some photos scattered here that I found on Overheard at Berkeley on the Facebook page, and you'll just understand. But sometimes it's really a hit or miss, but if it's a miss, you got pizza, you got cereal, you got desserts. The blondies, bomb. There are some days where it can get very good, like they have certain special days for holidays, like Valentine's Day, for Pi Day, which a lot of people left because coronavirus. There was, I think, some Thanksgiving Fest, Christmas Fest. Those were pretty good. Freshman 15 is kind of real. If you're a very picky eater and you don't like cafeteria food, it might not be as real, but I'd say that all the good food in the cafeterias are usually the unhealthy food, so that's probably why people tend to gain weight. Social life at Cal is definitely very work hard, play hard based. Just spending time doing work with friends and people in your club eventually becomes like a sense or like a way of socializing. When you have more time, I know a lot of people, they like to just take a BART and to trip to SF. That's one really great way to just get out of the city of Berkeley. And there's also a lot of things to do on campus. Like Berkeley is such a great college city because first of all, there's so many boba shops. There's just a lot of places on campus to eat good food that you can spend your money on if you don't like cafeteria food. So that's definitely a plus, but a negative to your bank account. My piece of advice is don't try to force anything. I know that, you know, even though I'm telling you that yes, residential life may be a big part of your social life, a lot of people may tend to think, oh, I have to be friends with the people on my floor, or I have to get super close to my roommates. But sometimes things just don't work out, and you have to learn how to 1, cope with it, 2, problem solve, 3, just find other ways to meet new people. And that's totally fine. Like, don't try to force yourself, because then you'll feel absolutely miserable, you won't feel welcome, and you'll just not enjoy your overall freshman experience. Don't worry. Especially as a freshman, there are many opportunities for you to meet people, be social. Even if you're an introvert, this is a great way to have a fresh start. So now that I gave y'all general information about different aspects of Cal, I hope that helped y'all perhaps to make a potentially better and more informed decision. So last few tips of advice I could give y'all on whether Cal might be a good or not as good fit for you is that I think you should definitely take a look at the course catalog for the fall 2020 semester. It's something that you probably should do for a lot of your colleges, just to get a sense of, oh, are you interested in these courses that are offered at the school? So I know for Cal, the course schedule will be released this Saturday. I'll link it over here. And yeah, you can just browse through it and see if any of them interest you. Some other things you may do is just look through each department's website and see if any of the fields interest you. Also, definitely talk to alumni or current students, because I feel that everyone's experience at Cal is kind of different. Last bit of information that's extremely crucial, whether or not you're considering Berkeley or not, is that one big piece of advice I have for you all is please don't make your decision based on what other people tell you to do, like based on the school name or the prestige, because ultimately this is the school that you are attending. Like, it might seem like, oh, if I make my decision based on what my parents feel or my friends or whatever pleases other people, it might feel good temporarily, like for this semester, the remainder of your senior year. But the moment you start college, that's definitely gonna slap you. I'm telling you, the moment you enter college, like after a while, you'll start to notice that like this prestige factor doesn't matter anymore. I went to a high school where everyone cared about, oh, go to this college because it's high in ranking or it's good at this major. But then like literally in like a month or so, nobody cares anymore. People are more about like, oh, how are you doing at this college? Like, are you happy? Or, you know, ultimately your college is kind of a step to your future. So if it's not a place where you can thrive, then you can't like grow. Last but not least, I'm always here to answer your questions, always here to support you, and please during this time stay safe and healthy and take care of yourselves. Yeah, go Bears!